Thank you, Chair. Mr. Nkosi, we were dealing with some background.
Sorry, Chair. Just water, please.
Sorry?
Water.
Water. Someone help with water?
Oh, somebody must just organize water for him.
Now, Mr. Nkosi, you explained to the Chair before we took the adjournment about the difference between the TP2 and TP3 tests, both of which had to be passed, and particularly the TP3 test as being the ultimate test before products could be supplied to the end user, in this case the SANDF. Now, you've referred to a number of tests that were done before you started in your current your position, taking over from Mr. Beetger. What, in very broad outline, did you discover? How many tests were conducted for TP2 in 2005?
Okay. I'll repeat again. It's 3 tests that were conducted for TP2 test. 3 tests.
Right.
There were 2 sets of tests that were done. One done under the auspices of Armscor, the other one done by LMT on their own accord.
With who?
With CSIR.
With CSIR?
Yes.
Which came first?
The one that was conducted by Armscor.
By Armscor?
Yes.
And ordinarily, would Armscor conduct these tests itself?
We conducted together with CSIR, as they are our technology partner. But it is important for Armscor to be there so that they keep the record of the hull configuration, amongst other things.
Yes. You've mentioned in your affidavit, you touched on this earlier, that Armscor in fact has a legal authority, a legal status in relation to the certification of arms components or items such as this. Is it in fact the statutory authority, the legal authority to issue?
I'm not sure about that, but it is Armscor's task as responsibility. I'm not sure in terms of statutory requirements, but they are obliged to do so.
Okay.
Yes.
And then there were two processes that you've just reminded us of in 2005, but 3 tests done. Is that right?
Correct.
And was any TP3 test done in 2005?
No, they wouldn't have done that because at the time the baseline had not been finalized. So it was just an entry test.
Just explain to the Chair what a baseline is, please.
Basically, again, it's an entry test, so that Armscor makes due diligence to make sure that if some modifications are happening to like the platform, then you would have met the bare minimum requirements, the bare minimum requirement test, with an understanding that because we wanted additional things on the hull, there will be additional things that are still going to be finalized throughout the process, throughout the procurement of the vehicle.
And did you discuss with Mr. Beetger what the outcome of the first test was in 2005?
Yes, I discussed with him the outcome of that, and he basically told me everything that he had.
Yes.
Yeah, that he had.
Okay.
I'm sorry, he informed you of?
Yeah, he informed me of everything else and all the intricacies that were involved in the project, and some of his misgivings as well.
Okay, well, we'll get to that. Just, if you can just...
Don't be too far from the mic, but don't be too close either.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
And if you could please just try and remember, I know it's difficult, but try and look towards the Deputy Chief Justice, the Chair, rather than me, even though I'm giving most of the questions.
Okay.
Because it'll be easier for the Chair then to hear, and it'll also pick up on your microphone in that direction.
Okay.
Okay. So what was the outcome of the first test? Did the vehicles, these are called Patria vehicles, is that right?
Correct.
Did those Patria vehicles in fact pass or fail the first test?
Let's start with the first test. It's a wheel shot test. They passed the wheel shot test.
Is it correct that there are different elements to the test?
Yes, there's different elements to like the
Okay.
test that are actually entailed.
Okay, so,
Yeah, it depends on the complexity of the vehicle that is being tested.
yes. But, and you deal with this in some detail in your affidavit, which the chair will be able to go through. Can you just confirm, so some of the elements of the first TP2 test that these vehicles were subjected to, some of those they passed and others not?
Yes, it's a series of tests, basically. Yes.
Okay. So what was the overall outcome of the test itself,
The
comprising all
overall
these
outcome,
elements?
the first test, it was a wheel shot. Generally, by and large, with my experience with the test, wheel test generally passed because it shows you, it sort of like simulates when the military vehicle hits a landmine with the front tires or rear tire. So basically, because of it passes generally, but the most important shot that the test that failed is the hull shot.
So it failed the hull
Shot,
shot,
yes. Basically where the occupants sit at the back.
right.
Yeah.
And how important is that as an element? What is the significance if you fail that particular element of the TP2 test?
Basically, we get human readings on we put dummies, anthropometric test devices on that, the dummies, and we basically get threshold values with threshold values from international literature and studies that have actually shown that if it was a human who sits on that vehicle, if it's above a certain threshold, then they will either die or being decapitated, basically, in simple terms. But the hull test failed because the readings were just too high.
Okay.
Yes.
Now,
Come closer to the mic again.
Okay.
You are too far. So you say it would affect people sitting at the back. What about
Yes.
people sitting at the front? They would not be affected.
It depends, that is why it is important for Armscor to be involved on the test, because we are an independent body with an interest of the SANDF at heart. We look at the vehicle to see which area is likely to actually cause damage. That's where we put the landmine, basically. We look at the worst case scenario.
What I'm trying to find out, when you talk about people at the back, one presupposes that there could be people at the front.
Yes,
or
there are
in the
drivers. There's normally the
Yes.
driver, and there's normally the crew commander. There's people operating the turret as well.
middle. Yes, but does it mean that they would be safe?
It doesn't mean they will be safe, but we have to take a
Their
series
chances of being injured there are less chances of them being injured compared to those who sit at the back.
Basically, we look. We could either put it at where the drivers is, because the landmine can actually explode there. In actual sense, we should be testing all the areas where people are sitting, just to be sure.
Yes.
Yes, basically, on this particular test, according to my predecessor, they had actually intended to look at various critical positions because of the nature of the vehicle and the complexity of the vehicle, because it includes the turret as well, where human lives sit as well. But because on the second test, it just failed the hull test. But the intention was to actually look at other strategic positions within the vehicle to see if it passes or not.
If it fails one,
Yes.
just like for people at the back, do you then have to take it back and they look at everything, including people who would sit in the middle and in the front?
Yes,
So in other words, you don't have to do all, because
If it
failing
fails-
one is enough.
Failing in one is enough, because
Okay.
all the lives on the vehicle matter. Failing
Okay.
one is enough, so it would mean that basically the potential bidder
Yeah.
will have to go back going back to the drawing board, go back
Yeah.
to the TP1, do simulations again, and do their own test outside of our test before coming back to us again with confidence to try it out again.
But in terms of which one you test, whether it's people at the back or in the front, is it like a sample? You just take anyone The manufacturers never know whether you'll test people in the front or people in the middle. You just take anyone, and if it fails, that's it.
Yes, that is why it is important for Armscor to be the people who choose that, because you don't want a situation whereby maybe a potential bid alarms a particular area, knowing very well that you'll be testing there. So it's a decision by the national authority. Armscor, together with the CSIR, would sit and look at the critical part within the specific vehicle. At which point can they actually hit?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. And did Mr. Beetge discuss this problem with the very first test that he'd been involved in with you when you were, when he was handing over to you?
Yes, it discussed everything. I saw the footage. The beauty of it, that's why if it's under the auspices of Armscor, we have Armscor Quality as well, which is a critical division within our Armscor as well that offers independent quality check of the vehicle. You need to check the baseline of the vehicle, the drawings. Sometimes you actually need to measure. You need to measure the weight of the vehicle. You need to go take pictures, all the angles, wherever you can, so that you can put it on your repository for any possible legal ramifications that had come after in years, then to show that you've taken pictures, you've weighed the vehicle, this is the correct baseline and everything like that.
Now, you refer in your affidavit to a report which came from the CSIR documenting the requirements of Armscor from the test. This is the, just want to confirm, yes, that's the first test. This is in your affidavit, page 15. If you look at the top left numbers, 15.
Yes.
Paragraph 8.2.
15.8.2, yes.
You refer to the report referring to LMT and not Patria as the provider of the item to be tested. Do you know, can you explain that?
Basically, the vehicle was provided to us by LMT. I guess maybe they have a relationship with Patria that I'm not party to. But
Okay.
the sample was provided to us by LMT.
And then you refer to an executive summary of the report in 8.4.
Yes.
The third line of 8.4, the test team passed the wheel test but failed the hull test due to greater than threshold, what is the next word, tibia forces, loose objects pervading the interior of the test item and penetration of the hull by the blast.
Yes.
So was this your understanding of the reason why it failed this test?
Yes, basically it's that. Just if you look at 8.5, the test was actually classified as catastrophic
Yes,
because there was fire inside the vehicle, the hull ruptured, things like that.
right.
So it means that if it was a human being that was there, it could have been the end of their life.
The end of that. May we just have a moment to clarify something, please, Chair?
Okay.
May I take you, please, Mr. Nkosi, to page 255.
255.
Yeah.
Where is the page?
You have it?
255. Where is it?
Please turn to page 255.
I have, okay, 255. Okay, thank you.
Please just go to the page number I've given you.
255, okay. Yes.
Is this the CSIR report that you're referring to, which was done for the first test with Armscor?
I just have to look at the document itself. This is not the one here. I think this is the second one that was done by CSIR.
Is that
This
the
a
second
third
one?
test. That's a third test.
That's the third test,
Yes.
okay.
This is the one that was requested by LMT on
Yes.
their own accord to the CSIR.
Yes, but you filed the various reports in your affidavit, as part of your annexures to your affidavit, not so?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about the wrong reference, Chair. Right then, you then deal with a second test, also conducted in 2005, on these vehicles, correct?
Let's be specific. It's the third test, because the two tests have occurred already.
That's the third, but we
Yes.
know that it's not the first. You've
Yes.
clarified that.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, may I just take you back to your evidence so we don't jump ahead to the third test. Let's get back to the end of the first test. That was a catastrophic failure,
Yes.
as you put it. Now, then there was a second test. And that you deal with on page 16, your paragraph 9.
Yes.
Again, it was conducted in 2005, long before you joined.
Yes.
And what was the outcome of, who submitted the vehicles for the second test?
Because they failed the Armscor test, LMT on their own accord.
It was LMT.
Yes, on their own accord, they fixed the vehicle. Basically, they retrofitted the vehicle that failed. They removed the.
Just speak up, please, and try and look
Yes,
towards the chair.
Yes, they basically retrofitted the vehicle. They removed the part that was blown apart, and apparently increased the thickness of the hull, and went back to the CSIR to basically test their vehicle on their own accord, without Armscor's presence, in terms of verifying the baseline, looking at the vehicle, taking the masses, as it is a requirement by the RSML standard.
So the question was, who sent it for the test? The answer is LMT did,
Yes,
but didn't involve Armscor.
correct.
Should it have involved Armscor?
Yes, according to the standard, they have to involve Armscor, because as we stand currently, Armscor does not even have the correct baseline of this particular vehicle that was tested.
Now, where the first test had resulted in a catastrophic failure, you indicate in your affidavit, paragraph 9.2,
Yes.
that it's not documented why the Patria vehicle was allowed to undergo the second test after there was a catastrophic failure of the first test. Why is that?
Yes, I do not know why was LMT allowed to actually carry on with the test. Maybe it was before my time, I'm not sure about
Okay,
that.
you don't know, and it wasn't explained there.
Yes.
But if I were to submit a vehicle for the TP2 test and it results in a catastrophic failure, does that mean I have to close down that business? I can never carry on, I can never improve or correct it?
I'm not sure on the contractual conditions, but on the documents that I've seen, on the critical criteria, on the documents that I've seen, it means that the company has actually failed. They need to restart again, or maybe the whole process should actually restart again.
Okay. Now, what was the outcome of that second test?
Yes, the second test, I'm fortunate to have someone who was part of the test, who was a scientist at the CSIR who was part of it. They passed the test.
And from your study of the documents, was it appropriate that they passed the test?
Not according to France and not according to the CSIR, because they provided them with a specimen that was not even documented or recorded, or weighed, or even established on the adequacy of that particular test item that was presented. But with the CSIR, they've clearly stated that if you bring the vehicle to them and say test, they will test scientifically according to the RSML standard, but they are not sure on whatever thing that you provided, because they did not really spend time with the vehicle, look at the data pack, what changes were made. Because if it failed, like the Armscor test, they were supposed to go back to do the TP1, provide the simulation results to show that now they are ready again to test, provide the engineering test, which is what this third test was supposed to be. It's an engineering test just for them to get confidence again, so
Okay.
that they can resume the test that actually failed at Armscor.
Okay. And then in 9.3, you say the engineering test was subsequently interpreted to be a TP2 by Armscor.
Yes.
Who in Armscor interpreted the outcome of this test to be a TP2 test?
It's my predecessor.
Your
Franz
predecessor.
Beatrice.
Is that Mr. Betre?
Yes.
Did he raise any concerns about the outcome of this thing?
Yes, he actually raised so many concerns because from 2009 up to now, you could see that there was quite a lot of movement, because once they realized that this test was actually not correctly done according to like the RSA mail standard, so they tried to plug in all the holes that are missing on the test, so that it might look legitimate on an eye that does not delve on the details of the test.
Now,
I'm sorry,
Sorry,
just explain that they tried to criticize the test.
No. Basically, after realizing the inadequacies of this particular test that passed, there was later attempts to try and legitimize the whole operation by doing other additional simulation tests, basically,
Okay.
on the vehicle.
Okay, now you say the inadequacies of the test.
Yes, inadequacies.
Now, that might mean the test was flawed, not the vehicles.
Yes,
Was it the test that had flaws, or the test was fine, but the vehicles were not manufactured according to the required standard? That's why they failed the test.
basically, if you do the test, there's many components on the test. You look at flying objects. As you can, if I can take you back to 8.4.2. On the test that we did.
8.4?
8.4.2.
Yes.
Yes, basically inside the vehicle there are objects that once the vehicle is subjected to a landmine test, they fly around. Those are critical. They can actually maim or skewer people inside the vehicle.
Okay.
All those particular items were removed on that test. Yes.
Okay. Now I understand. Thank you.
thank you, Chair. So am I right in saying that, in understanding that the TP2 test involves a number of elements,
Yes.
and are you saying that some of those elements weren't even tested?
They were not even tested.
They were not even tested in the CSIR, so they did some but not others.
Yes, they did some, not the others.
Now, you set out a number of technical issues from 931
Yes.
to 9321
Yes.
as being discrepancies that were identified.
Yes.
What are those discrepancies? Does that refer to elements of the test not even being tested?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So, in other words, there was a test done, but it wasn't a comprehensive test. They only tested for a few things.
Yes, basically.
And
The
not other
CSIR
things.
tested whatever thing that the LMT requested them to do. Yes.
Yes. Now, as a result of that test, was any certificate issued by Armscor?
Yes, unfortunately, the certificate was issued by Armscor.
Even though that they should not have been bypassed by LMT going directly to CSIR,
Yes, how they did it, I do not know.
and even though also the test by CSIR wasn't a comprehensive test, so many of the elements were not even tested.
Correct.
Okay.
That is the position that Armscor issued the certificates on the strength of the tests done by CSIR, or did they also do the test or supervise the test? And
No, they were actually invited as guests.
yes,
Yes, they were there as guests.
not
But
to do
no,
oversight.
Not to oversight, to actually see the whole process. Because what normally happens before the test, you actually go to the premises of the vehicle, the manufacturer, you exchange document, the data packs, you exchange the data packs, you weigh the vehicle, you take pictures, just as evidence. as evidence that is critical in the whole process. Yes.
They didn't do that here.
No. They might have done it with the CSR, I'm not sure. But
Okay.
Armscor currently,
Armscor didn't do it.
Armscor currently does not have that evidence of what vehicle was actually tested. Because on the CSR reports, it was evident that basically what happened was they basically took the vehicle that was blown catastrophically and basically cut the section that was torn apart and retrofitted a thicker part and took the vehicle back again to the test with the turret baskets that have actually concertinaed after the first test. I wish maybe you could actually be exposed to the pictures that actually happened on the test. You would actually
Yes.
see on how catastrophic the test was.
Yes.
So basically, it was just to retrofit.
Does it sound like a cut and paste job?
Cut and paste job, like, honestly, it was a cut and paste job.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to further describe it, but
Yes.
it doesn't follow engineering principles.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask you to turn in the bundle to page 46?
Yes.
Just have a quick glance at that document and just confirm. I want you to indicate whether you're able to tell us whether this was the CSIR report for the first test or the second test or anything else.
Okay. Page 46, basically, before the tests were taken, LMT, or Armscor rather, Armscor requested CSIR.
Yes. Apologies.
Armscor requested the CSIR to do a theoretical evaluation of the specimen before the test that happened, the first two tests that happened.
So this was before the first
yes,
test.
basically.
So this
So-
wasn't the first test. And then if
Yes.
I can ask you please to turn to page 138. It also seems to be a CSIR report.
Did you say 138?
138, yes, Chair. This one is dated 14th of June 2005, which is a little after the other test we've just looked at.
138, yes.
Yes. Is this the test report for the first or the second test that you've referred us to, the TP2 test?
Yes,
Or
this is the, if I look at it, if you can look carefully, approved by it's important to have an Armscor signature there. There's a France Bietre there. Unfortunately, this one is signed. I can actually get you a copy of the signed one. This should be the test results for the first two tests that actually happened, that were under the auspices of Armscor.
Of the first test,
Yes.
right? And if I can ask you now, please, to turn to page 255.
Yes.
It's also dated 2005, August 2005. Are you able to indicate whether this was the report for the second?
Third test.
Was this the third test?
Yes, that's an engineering test that was conducted by CSIR
Okay.
on behalf of LMT. If you can look carefully on the signature page as well, there's no Armscor involvement there.
That's page 256.
If you look at page 256, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Would Armscor, would there be a signature from somebody from Armscor there, even though on the face of it, it appears to be a CSIR document?
Yes, as it is the case with the test that was conducted with Armscor being there.
Yes.
Because we work with CSIR as our technological partner.
Yeah, okay.
So that one would have a CSR page as well.
Yes.
The other one would, even if though
Yeah.
can have an Armscor person there or not,
Yes.
depending on who requested the test.
But the absence of a signature from somebody from Armscor
Yes, that-
reflects a defect that it's not what it should be.
Yes,
It doesn't carry the same status. Yeah. It's not valid.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. But for the SANDF vehicles, Armscor signature has to be there because we have
Yes.
Armscor quality having to
Yes.
take place.
Yeah.
Armscor quality having to oversee the process as well, together
Yeah.
with Armscor acquisition as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the absence of Armscor would weaken the weight of this document
In this instance.
in this instance.
Yeah, I'll have to be specific in this
Yeah,
instance.
yeah,
Because
okay.
CSIR on their own,
Yes.
they do validate vehicle on their
Yes.
own and
Yeah.
issue certificates. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. But did Armscor later accept this test as having been passed?
Yes, my predecessor accepted it, which is a decision that he actually regretted. Because if you can look on some of the annexures, CSIR as well, together with Franz Bietre, they actually, it's Dr. Isaac Sneyman and Dr. Franz Bietre, they actually wrote in their misgiving on the test that had actually happened. But why did he sign the certificate, I do not know. Because that certificate was a critical requirement in placing the contract. Was a critical requirement in placing a contract, if we have to put it on record.
Was passing the TP2 test a requirement of the contract in a sense of if you don't comply, then you're in breach of contract?
Correct.
All right, now, you've said that you're not sure why Beetge acted in the way he did. Did he express anything to you as to whether he was happy with how he'd acted?
No, in principle, he told me everything that was actually involved. It's a matter of he says, she says. But basically, the bottom line, whoever convinced him to sign, I cannot divulge the names and things like that. Basically, he had promised that because the standard anyway still requires the TP3 test to be conducted.
Yeah.
He should not worry about that because there's a still determining phase whereby this vehicle will still be tested.
And
His reasoning for signing was based on those assumptions.
So, am I right in understanding what you're saying, that he was fairly relaxed about agreeing that they'd passed the TP2 test because he took comfort from the fact that, well, if there are any shortcomings, they'll be picked up at the
Correct.
TP3 stage,
Correct.
and you can't deliver vehicles to the customer unless and until the TP3 test has been passed?
Correct.
Okay.
But what do you say about that explanation or reasoning?
For me, if we were together, I was not going to actually issue the certificate.
Not have agreed to that?
I wouldn't have agreed to the certificate because there's a lot of omissions that were not done on that test, on that Wolfville test.
What he seems to have been told and what he seems to have agreed to, does it not amount to not doing your job?
I cannot say that.
Well, you can't say because you are his successor. You know, would it not be your job if you are faced with the same situation? Would you not be derelicting your duty if you did what he seems to have done?
Yeah, it would have been tantamount to that, but
Yeah.
I do not know the reasons that actually compelled
You
him
do,
to
yeah,
actually-
but on the face of it,
on the face of it,
it
because
would be a dereliction of duty as far as you are concerned, and it's not something that you would do.
it's not something that I would have done in his
Yeah.
position.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
May I just put to the witness a version that will be given by
Mr.
Dr.
Pietro.
Nell
Oh, okay.
from LMT,
Yes.
who has given us an affidavit, and he has been referred to your affidavit and your comment, you believe, as you've said in 9.4 of your affidavit, it was incorrect for Armscor to issue certificates for landmine protection. Dr. Nell will say before the Commission, but at the completion of the TP2 test, Armscor congratulated LMT and issued certificates. That was before your time, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Does it give you any reassurance as to what was done, whether it was good or bad?
Congratulations can mean anything. Congratulations can mean that maybe thanks for having passed the engineering test. See you again on the TP2 test that is administered by Armscor. Congratulations could basically mean anything.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that necessarily that they've been given a go-ahead that you are the heroes of the revolution.
Right. So you've testified that Armscor did issue a certificate, despite the fact that there were shortcomings in the test, how it was done, as you've indicated. Do those certificates last forever, or do they last for a limited period?
The certificates, oddly, they actually subsequently requested to be changed again in the year 2009.
Yes. So you deal with that in your paragraph 10.
Yes.
They were reissued in 2009. What I'm really asking for is an answer to this question. Is there an automatic expiry of a certificate? Why were the certificates reissued? Why were they not just continuing?
I'm not sure. Maybe they picked up there was an issue. There was an error in the certificate that was issued in 2005. That was not Party 2. Fortunately, one of the persons that issued his signature is still there. Is still alive. Maybe he can answer to that question why. But my understanding there was an error with the test report that was stamped on the certificate. So they were trying to rectify that.
Okay.
But the norm is that when such certificates are issued generally,
Yeah.
are they valid for certain specified periods, or are they valid forever?
It's a certificate that's varied basically
Forever.
to show, yeah, valid
Yeah,
forever, basically.
because it relates to a particular time.
So one would ask himself, because if you sign that certificate, you need to have proper documents in front of you to make sure that what appears on that certificate is genuine as according to like the test. So whatever reasons that they actually change, I do not know.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Nkosi, may you please turn to page 302? Do you have it?
I think
That appears to be an Armscor certificate of product validation.
yes.
It says that it certifies that the mine-protected Patria TP2 hull has been validated against an 8-kilogram TNH surrogate landmine underneath the crew compartment. It gives a test number. It says it has been verified by Armscor in accordance with test procedure, and it gives a particular test procedure.
Correct.
And then it says it gives the certificate of validation number for Land Mobility Technologies LMT Pty Limited. Is that the LMT that you've been referring to
Correct.
as the representative of Patria vehicles? It was issued on the 7th of September 2005.
Okay.
Was that the first certificate that you were aware of arising from the TP2 tests in 2005?
I'll tell you now if the first one that was issued was the wheel. If you turn to page 304.
304?
Yes, that's the chronology. You start with the wheel.
304 is dated...
Sorry, 303. 303. Sorry.
303,
Yes.
right? So 303 is dated the same date, the
Yes.
7th of September 2005.
Yes.
So there were two certificates issued in 2005. Correct?
Yes.
Yes. And both of those certificates you felt were wrongly issued.
No. The wheel test passed. The test that was
I see.
conducted by Armscor, it passed.
Okay. So was that the one at page 303?
Yes, 303. That's the one that Armscor have all the necessary information
So it passed that,
It passed the wheel
right?
test,
But the
yes.
other one, it didn't pass, and yet Armscor gave it a certificate saying it had passed.
The other one had failed the hull test, and
Yes.
subsequently they did an engineering test that Armscor converted to a TP2 test.
Okay, and then the next certificate at page 304 is one issued in September 2009, 7th of September 2009. Is this the certificate that your affidavit refers to as having been reissued?
Yes, basically, they've basically reissued the same two certificates, 303 and 304.
Yes.
So basically, 303 now has been converted to 304, if you can page on the document. It's the wheel test.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
And then the 302 has been, yeah.
right. Now, was a further test actually done by LMT for this vehicle before the reissuing of the certificate in 2009, from what you were able to learn from Mr. Beetger or from the documents that are available to you?
There was no further
There was no
test.
test.
Yes.
What, do you have a comment on whether it was acceptable or not to reissue a certificate where there was no further test?
I think the reason for issuing this statement was apparently having to correct the test number. If you can look at the test number on page 303 and 304, they are different. They are trying to align that for whatever reason.
Are you referring to the test procedure on
Yes,
page
if you
3?
look at the
Sorry,
test
please
number.
don't.
Yes.
Sorry, hold on, Mr. Nkosi. Please don't talk over when I'm putting a question to you,
Correct.
because the chair won't be able to hear and the microphone won't record if we're
Correct.
both talking at once.
Correct.
So can I just put the question? You're referring on page 302 to the number DEF
Yes.
2005/166 or
Yes.
504?
Yes. Yes, exactly. So it was.
Sorry,
replaced-
which one?
Yes, the test number was subsequently changed to reflect that one for whatever reason.
I see two numbers on this page, Mr. Nkosi.
Yes.
Both start with DEF 2005.
Yes.
The first number refers to stroke 166 and the second to 504. Which one should we be looking at for your purposes?
I'm specifically zooming at the test number. If you can.
Yes,
look
which
at that-
one? Is it 166?
The 159. I'm looking at page 303.
Mr. Nkosi, would you
Are we
please-
on the same page?
Yes, I'm on page 303 and 304 now.
Oh, I think we are on 302.
I was putting to you questions relating to page 302.
302, correct, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on 302, which one should we look at? The test number, which ends in 166, or the test procedure, which ends in 504?
Yes, they changed the test number.
Sorry, which one is the test number? Is it 166?
It's 166, yes.
Right. And where did they change it?
This is the hull test. This is the hull test.
Yes, just show me where they changed it. You
Okay.
said they changed it somewhere.
Yes,
Where?
if you look at page 303,
303, yes?
on the line test number,
Yes.
yes, it's the F2005 159.
159.
Yes,
So that is the
subsequent-
change,
That's the
166
Yes.
instead of 159. They
No,
should
no,
have been
no.
the same.
No, it's not the change. The change, if I may just take you
Yes, yeah.
baby steps.
Yeah.
Look at page 303 and page 304.
Yes, I'm not getting to 304 yet.
Yes, those are, if I may explain,
Yes.
they are the same, they are the wheel tests.
Just come closer to the mic and raise your voice a bit. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, just start afresh, explain.
Yes, 303 and 304 are the wheel tests.
So 302 we can ignore because that is
Yes,
the hull test.
That's the hull test, exactly.
Okay.
That's the point I was trying to make.
Okay.
Yes.
So what was the problem with 303 that they needed to change?
They changed the test number. Unfortunately, I'm not party to the reasons why did they change the
Okay.
test number. As you can see, there's a change on that. It's a wheel, it's a front wheel. On 304, they changed the test number on that.
Okay, so it
Yeah,
was
basically they were trying to realign for whatever reasons that I was not party.
okay, but it wasn't because they had retested the
No,
vehicle and it
no.
was now passing.
No.
It was because they wanted to change the number for reasons you don't know.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Now, in your affidavit, you have a lengthy section that deals with your interactions with Mr. Goosen,
Yes,
an
take me-
internal memorandum, a desktop study conducted in 2009, a landmine blast analysis in August 2016, and then you go back to the internal memorandums. In fact, later internal memorandums between you and Mr. Goosen on
Correct.
the landmine protection issue.
Correct.
Now, I'd like you deal from paragraph 13.4.
Page number?
I'm giving you that in a moment. Just bear with me if you would.
13.4 is at page 20.
Thank you, Chair. From page 20, you deal with internal memo 1 and then memo 2, and then the affidavit goes on for some pages to deal with a whole lot of memos and so
Yes,
forth.
yes, yes.
I don't believe, subject to the Chair's guidance, that it is necessary for us to go into all the detail of the memos. They're all available and you've analysed them for the help of for the assistance of the Commission.
Yes.
Can you just tell us, if you would please, Mr. Nkosi, what is being dealt with at a very broad summary level?
Okay.
What was your process of interaction with Mr. Goosen? What did the desktop study involve, and all these memos? What was the purpose of these communications?
Basically, I believe once they realized that there were some flaws on the test, they tried to conduct other desktop studies and simulation studies to try and move away from conducting a TP3 test and actually classifying that the vehicle has actually reached a manufacturing baseline. So from 2014, Mr. Bietre came to me. I was absolutely worried now.
He was what?
He
Worried.
was worried.
Worried, yes.
Said because there were rumors, there was a groundswell of evidence that there's manufacturing happening across the country for whatever reason, but they have actually not reached the point whereby.
Try and speak up a bit, please, and please look
You
towards
are
the Chair.
lowering your voice.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Just go closer to the mic and
Yes, can you
try
hear
and
me now?
raise it.
Yes,
The
can you
more
hear
you
me?
lean back, the more I don't hear you.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Mr.
Okay.
Bietre, whilst I was still his understudy, he was actually worried with whatever is happening across the country, whereby there was a go-ahead being given to start building the house on the vehicle that has not been tested. So he was worried now that, you know what, looks like they're busy building the hull, but we haven't certified the vehicle. So that's why I was now busy writing the memo that, Philip, I still need the vehicle to test before you can declare that you've reached a manufacturing base. We have to test the vehicle. So basically that was that, because he tried to also introduce simulations to show that the vehicle can be fit for people to use. But the RSML standard is clear. You cannot use simulations to certify it. So basically, all the communications was to actually try to get the vehicle to Armscor to test, because that's a phase that has not been completed. That as an engineer, as a South African, I couldn't let that slide, because it's our soldiers' lives that are actually involved. So that is why I was quite vociferous on that you cannot, not under my watch. It could have happened in 2005, whereby the TP2 had a lot of unanswered questions, but on these specific ones, because you will never know, it could be my child who's actually on that vehicle, and then I had given it a go-ahead without giving it a go-ahead. So basically, we fought together with Franz Bietre, because he realized that the tide now is actually moving towards the right. Before time, there was a euphoria and excitement on the manufacturing. Before we had actually given a go-ahead that we've tested all the necessary points to now bless the manufacturing to actually take place.
Was that change of attitude maybe because of your role that you were now playing in this whole thing, which obviously you didn't play in 2005 because you were not there?
Yes, the role now, it will be Phumlani Nkosi's name that had actually led such a critical requirement on the RSML standard to be ignored. So I couldn't allow that. Together with Armscor, with my divisional manager, we we started writing memos to
Yes.
request the vehicle.
Yes.
Because testing the vehicle cost a fraction of the entire contract. It is the right thing to do, so that we know we've done due diligence as Armscor employees, as engineers, as South Africans.
What position is Mr. Goosen still employed by Denel? By Armscor?
No. I think throughout these interactions, I think somehow he decided to leave
He
the
left.
Yeah, he left the company. I think it was the end of 2017 for whatever reasons. I do not know.
Okay. Yeah, just try and, if you can, just try and direct your answer to the specific question. My question was not why he left, but I said, is he still there?
Yes.
So no. So
Correct.
he's
Correct.
resigned. What position before he resigned did he occupy when you were dealing with him in these meetings and the memos that are referred to in your affidavit?
He was the program manager for the program who faced it.
Okay. And if I understood your evidence earlier correctly, but please correct me if I'm wrong, these communications suggested to you that there were attempts to try and fix up a problem that had already started as far back as 2005.
Yes, they were basically trying to ameliorate.
To ameliorate it?
Yes.
Yes.
Basically, yeah. By
Well-
putting things that are not scientifically proven to actually provide safety for the soldiers.
Try and keep your volume up, please, Mr. Nkosi.
Yes.
Just like I'm keeping my volume up. Try and keep it up. Sometimes you start loud and then
Yes, your voice
You
goes
sing.
down, Mr. Nkosi. So maybe you should keep much closer to the mic than would be normal.
Okay, it's fine, I'll do that.
Yeah,
It's fine.
because I think you easily slow down and then your voice
Okay,
becomes
can you
too
repeat
soft.
the question again?
Okay. What position did he hold at the time? You said program manager.
Correct.
Was he trying to fix up problems with the TP2 certificates, or was he trying to get a TP3 certificate at that stage?
I think he was trying to get a TP3 certificate at that stage without actually testing the vehicle.
Without testing the vehicle?
Correct.
Why do you say you think that's the case?
It's my opinion, because
It's based on what?
it's based on what has been happening on Denel when there was apparently manufacturing baseline that has been reached that we are not familiar to.
Now, legally, is it possible to, sorry, in fact, we've dealt with that. Sorry, Chair, may I just rephrase it? Has Denel in fact been manufacturing these vehicles without a TP3 certificate?
My involvement is largely on the landmine protection. If I may just answer it like that. There hasn't been any TP3 test that has been done. So you are correct that Denel has been manufacturing vehicles without a TP3 test.
The fixing of a problem that had occurred, or problems that had occurred in 2005, would there be a basis to suspect that maybe there was an attempt to conceal something, or that would be going too far?
Yes, I'll be going too far. I'm not sure.
You are not sure,
Yes, I'm
okay,
not
but
sure.
certainly it was an attempt to fix the problem, whether correctly or not correctly might be another issue.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Now, when and in fact your affidavit records also your confirmation now that Denel has started manufacturing platform hulls.
Yes.
You refer to DLS, is that Denel Land Systems, are they manufacturing the hulls?
That's what I heard, yes. That's what actually spurred Franz Pietre to tell me that, you know what, you cannot let this thing to happen because I'm just about to retire. They cannot be, they are not supposed to be manufacturing the hull at this point before we actually give them a go-ahead by testing the vehicle, by certifying the vehicle to be manufactured.
Had they already started manufacturing at the time that he left?
Basically, there was a ground sale of evidence that...
Sorry, had they started manufacturing?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
Yeah.
Thank you. And as we sit or stand here today, has there yet been a TP3 certificate issued for these vehicles?
Nope.
And you refer, if I can take you in your affidavit, to page 27.
27.
Sorry, 27. Could you read for the chair, please, your paragraph 14.6? In fact, sorry, 14.5 to the end.
In short, TP3 test is a fundamental test, is fundamental to test and evaluate all design changes implemented since the structural TP2 platform tests, and to assess secondary fragmentation risks and repairability.
Yes, carry on.
The RSA mill standard TP3 tests on the section variant would address the critical aspects of evaluating the assessed worst case scenario for occupant survivability of the Wolf-Easter family of vehicles in order to secure the best results for the SANDF and the future users and operators of the Badger systems. Lastly, it will ensure compliance with the RSA mill standard as required by the SANDF.
Carry on.
A TP3 test which was not addressed on the system specification document, Armscor has committed that they will allocate funds in order to conduct these tests. In November 2013, Dinel committed in complying with the request to conduct TP3 testing on this vehicle.
And your last sentence?
Yes, I'm aware that Dinel has started to manufacture platform hulls despite the fact that the vehicle have not been certified in the TP3 test.
Can you give, just in a sentence maybe, to the chair, your feeling as a citizen, as you put it earlier,
Yes.
and as a highly qualified mechanical engineer responsible for important issues in Armscor? Can you just give your overall conclusion as to how you feel about this issue relating to the certification of these vehicles?
Yes, for me, the results of the fights that started on the memos on 2005 culminated in paragraph 14.7, where Dinel, with the assistance of DVS vehicle system, they acknowledged that the importance of this test, and they had actually put the plan in place to make sure that this vehicle is actually tested. But now the question remains, with all these hulls that are being manufactured, what will happen if the vehicle fails? But if it passes, then everyone is happy and then there won't be issues. But it is important to actually test. As a South African, holding this position that I'm holding, I wouldn't have allowed this thing to slide without proper tests being conducted. Let alone whatever happened in 2005 with the TP2 test, which was, it is important to bring the well-defined baseline to be tested before the vehicles give into it, like the SANDF.
May I just ask a final question on the same topic? You suggested earlier that some of these changes or efforts that were being made, for example, the change in the certificate test number, and in some of the efforts to reprogram things to see if they could achieve progress in relation to the certification. From a practical point of view, what are there significant implications that would flow if it were true that people are manipulating things, changing things inappropriately? Or is it just simply a question of paperwork and a test number not really mattering?
I'm not at liberty to to comment on the implications on people who are trying to do this or do that. But what I can actually comment on are the importance of the test.
Importance of the test.
Yes, whether people were trying to hide or not, it's not my business to compare.
Okay.
As an RSA mill standard officer, as a plus specialist, we have to conduct the test before we give it to our users.
Right. Chair, we have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nkosi, for coming to assist the Commission. If we need you to come back and assist us, you will be asked. But thank you very much. You are now excused.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. May we now turn to call, with your leave, the next witness,
Yes.
who is Mr. Mlipa. Do you want to take a short adjournment while...
Yeah, okay, let me take a 5 minutes adjournment while everything is being prepared.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn.
So, you may have an extra one for such
It's a reality. Thank you very much. I will tell the chairperson, because he's received your document, I will just tell him that you're the witness who is the subject of the email communication last night, but the issue has been resolved with you, and you are going to give evidence now. Okay. Hello.
How are you?
Fine, thanks. How are
I'm
you?
all right.
Good.
Yeah, I miss
Sorry?
Mom's
Oh, hello, Mishak. I'm Paul. Paul Kennedy. Hi,
Yeah.
nice to meet
I
you.
did a virtual with you.
You did?
Fanaze.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Fanaze let me talk to the guys in the room.
But that's very bad of
That's
you.
very, very good. Yeah, that's what I say.
But good to meet you.
corona.
Good question. It's a yes or no, just a yes.
Yeah, yeah. Have you told him that?
Yeah,
Great.
just win that.
Please,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the last one.
So that you're getting.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fine.
You know, the problem is
Yeah.
we actually have so little time
No, sure.
allocated for hearing of witnesses. And if a witness takes a day instead of an hour,
Yeah, and that's, yeah,
it
disturbs
has a
the
knock-on
whole-
effect. We're already
yeah.
seriously behind. So just listen to the question.
Listen to the question. Yeah.
If it's a yes
It's a
or
yes
no,
just say yes.
say yes or
Don't try
no.
to infer other things.
If you feel you need to give reasons, I will ask
I
you
will
that.
ask,
If you
yes.
really feel you absolutely have to, then you can
Yes.
say, may I
May I?
explain why?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, we'll have a look at the file. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
your name.
That's correct.
And you signed that on the 16th of October in front of a Commission of Oaths.
That's correct, Chair.
Is it correct that you have been through this affidavit and you are satisfied that the contents are true and correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. Chair, may we then ask formally for the admission of this affidavit with its annexures, Bundle 0, Denel Bundle 02, Exhibit W12, the affidavit of Mr. Mlipa.
The statement stroke affidavit of Mr. Xolani Mlipa, starting at page 4, is admitted as Exhibit W12.
Thank you, Chair. May I then proceed?
You may
Thank
proceed.
you. Mr. Mlipa, your affidavit is very helpful in that it gives a lot of clarity and detail. I'm going to try in the interests of time, but also to avoid unnecessary reference to detail, to focus just on particular areas. With the Chair's leave and subject to his guidance, may I take the witness just very briefly through his background, his
Yes.
professional background and his employment background?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mlipa, you're a mechanical engineer by profession.
That's correct, Chair.
You hold, as I understand, a national diploma in mechanical engineering,
That's correct, Chair.
and you originally worked for NASChem,
Correct?
and NASChem, from there you moved to DLS, to Denel Land Systems.
Correct, Chair.
When was that you moved to DLS?
It was in 2004.
Right. And how long did you stay there?
I stayed there until 2008, end of year, December.
And where did you go from there?
I joined Armscor.
And is that still your current employer?
That's correct, Chair.
So you joined when, in January 2009?
That's right, on the 5th.
And what is your current job title at Armscor?
Systems engineer.
When you were still at DLS, between 2004 and 2008, did any of your duties and functions involve the Hoefyster project?
Yes.
Just in a sentence or two, please, just be very brief. Explain what sort of role you played in relation to the Hoefyster project.
At Denel, I was part of the offer compilation team. I was working on the ammunition segment where we prepared the offer to submit to Armscor on behalf of Denel to do the job.
Am I right in assuming that the ammunition segment is different from the hull element of these vehicles?
Yes, it is different, correct.
Right. Were you part of the negotiating team from Denel in relation to the contract for the project, Hoefyster, being signed in 2007?
No.
Okay. Now just tell us what, in very brief terms, your role as a systems in, your role at Armscor now in your current capacity.
Chair, my role is to do the systems engineering work on behalf of Armscor, and that basically entails checking all the verification against each requirement that the contract has requested from Denel as the contracted agency. So I ensure that requirements are met, and I check that it is correct.
And this is the contract that was awarded by Armscor to Denel in what year?
In 2007, if I'm not mistaken,
Right.
2007.
Now, in your affidavit, you refer, and here, Chair, may I just refer to the page number? In your affidavit, Mr. Mlipa, you deal at page 12 with two phases rather, for the Hoefyster project, or Hoefyster contract, I beg your pardon.
At what page, Mr. Kennedy?
12.
12, okay.
Page 12. Yes, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Chair.
And you distinguish between two phases. You say that the Hoof-Eyster contract was divided into two phases, the development phase and the production phase. Just in non-technical terms, if you're able to, just explain briefly the difference between the two. What is the development phase?
Chair, development phase would entail work that would be done to really start at times from scratch, at times not from scratch, as you have heard that the vehicle was sourced from a different country, from a different company, and we would make it suitable for South African needs. That is development work. And then the other phase, that is the development phase. The other phase is the production phase, where now what has been confirmed through development, the requirements that have been made are now producing many numbers of that particular product.
And the second phase?
Apologies, Mr. Kennedy. I thought I went. Yes, second phase would then be.
Is the production phase. What stage is the project at the moment?
At the moment, we are still in the development phase, Chair, because we have not obtained the baseline that says development is completed.
And what is required to achieve that baseline still?
Chair, what is required is to obtain a baseline that is referred to as the product baseline, abbreviated as PBL.
That's a PBM.
PBL, Papa Bravo Lima, PBL.
PBL, I beg your pardon. Now, PBL, is that specified anywhere as to what it requires?
It is specified, Chair. Yes.
And where would one find that being specified?
Obviously, in the contract, it is also specified, Chair, but also in accordance with the established engineering standards. That definition would be given.
Right. If I can take you in your affidavit to page 16. 16.
I'm there, Chair.
You refer in paragraph 11 to product baseline. Is that the PBL concept that you were referring to earlier?
That's correct, Chair.
Won't you please read out to the Chair what you say in paragraph 11.1?
Apologies, Mr. Kennedy, 11.1.
Sorry, we're at page 19.
Page 19. Oh.
Paragraph 11 that we looked at a moment
yes.
ago.
Okay,
Paragraph
I'll read.
11, it follows the first line of paragraph 11.
Yes, I'll read. The product baseline is an approved set of data items, typically the product specification, integrated support plan, audit reports, and results of reviews, which consolidates and documents the results of the design and development phase.
Thank you. Now, am I right in understanding that the product baseline, the PBL, is just one of various baselines that have to be satisfied? If we look on the same page above the product baseline, there's paragraph 10, there's allocated baseline.
That is correct, Chair.
And then below paragraph 11, you'll see 12, manufacturing baseline.
Correct.
And if we page backwards, take one page back, we will see also that there are two other baselines, paragraph 8, a requirements baseline, and RBL, and a functional baseline, FBL.
That is correct, Chair.
And you've helpfully explained what each of these terms means. Now, may I take you again I'm sorry, Chair. Yes, page 14, paragraph 5, deals with the systems acquisition management process. And you say in paragraph 5.1, at Armscor, the systems acquisition management process is governed through the DAP 1000 policy, and you've attached a copy of that as one of the annexures, which is the SANDF standard for program baselines during the system acquisition management process.
That's correct, Chair.
SANDF in this context, correct me if I'm wrong, I understand is the customer in the ultimate customer in the Hoefyster project.
Absolutely correct, Chair.
So it is Armscor's customer, correct?
That's correct, Chair.
But you are in turn procuring these items from Denel.
That's correct, Chair.
But the SANDF lays down a DAP 1000 policy, being their standard. How is that used? What is that meant to achieve, and how is that used?
Chair, that policy defines and provides guidelines as to how the acquisition is to be executed within the defense, particularly our defense industry.
Right. And you then set out some detail about milestones, phases, and then you get to project baselines. We're going to be looking specifically again in a moment at the product baseline, the PBL element. That's one of these various baselines. Is that regulated by the SANDF DAP 1000 policy?
Chair, the policy cites other standards. So the next applicable document that it cites is the RSA Military Standard number 3.
Is that referred to in your paragraph 5.1, page 14?
That is correct, Chair.
So am I right in understanding there is a policy together with other standards, and they include the standard 3, the RSA Military Standard 3 that you refer to?
Absolutely.
Right, I interrupted you. And how does the PBL, does that relate to the MILD Standard 3 standard, or what?
Yes, Chair. PBL is referenced in RSA Mill Standard 3 as one of the baselines that have to be achieved as part of doing projects acquisition.
Right. Now I'd like to go back to the idea of the PBL, and take you to page 20 of your affidavit.
Page 20.
Yes.
I am there, Chair.
Paragraph 15 is headed DLS's tailored system acquisition management process leading to increased risk for Armscor. Now, before we get to the risk for Armscor, can you just explain to us, please, what the tailored element is of this? Who tailored what and why?
Chair, stemming from the RSA Mill Standard 3, it states that a contractor or anyone, whoever is doing the job, they are allowed to tailor. They may tailor. In this instance, the contract allowed and they tailored for a PBLA, let me call it that way. And it is specified like that in the contract. So that is what was tailored.
Just give us that again. What PB?
PBLA.
PDLA.
Papa Bravo Lima A, Alpha.
Right. And what does that stand for?
It stands for they call it, it was a risk reduction before the authentic PBL that Armscor would require.
I think Mr. Kennedy wanted to know what P stands for, what B stands for, and what L and A stand for, isn't it, Mr.?
I did, yes. Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
My apology, Chair. P stands for product, B and L stands for baseline.
And the A? So it's the same PBL we were talking about earlier?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it is the same PBL we were talking about. It's just now this is a tailored one
Okay. Now,
And the A,
The A is just a
for what?
subscript that the A is a subscript that was provided to differentiate it from the one that we would want as Armscor. They call that one PBL1.
oh, okay.
now, was a PBL specified by Armscor before it was tailored?
Chair, I would say yes, because RSA Mill Standard 3 is an applicable document as part of this contract, and one is supposed to do acquisition going through all these baselines, yes. Though one may tailor, of course.
Yes. Now, the contractor with whom you contracted at Armscor, your colleagues did, is DLS.
Correct, Chair.
Now, is it normal and permissible for contractors to tailor a process relating to the PBL element?
Yes, it is permissible. I suppose it's not only limited to a PBL, as the contract also did not just limit the tailoring to PBL. There are other baselines, ABL, that were also tailored. They tailored,
Yes.
Chair.
And to what extent are contractors allowed to tailor these items such as a PBL? Do they have to comply with minimum standards, or can they, is the sky the limit in relation to how they can tailor?
Chair, there is no prescribed way of tailoring, but I would say it goes without misunderstanding that risk is part of tailoring, that one must address risk.
So the PBL that is laid down in the Mill 3 specification is the standard generally applicable one, but that may be tailored by a particular contractor from time to time.
Correct, Chair.
And when a contractor such as DLS does tailor the PBL, is that subject to approval by Armscor?
Yes, Chair.
So a contractor is not at large to simply tailor unilaterally.
That's correct, Chair. Of course, it would have to be accepted.
Sorry, Chair, I just have a moment. Now, in relation to the Hoefyster project and the contract between Denel Land Systems and Armscor, has there in fact been a tailoring that has been done?
Yes, there has been, yes. Yes, Chair.
And was that done with the permission of Armscor?
Yes, Chair.
Can I take you in your affidavit if you can turn please to page 20.
I'm there, Chair.
You say in your affidavit, paragraph 15.1, DLS tailored the process to their approach. Numerous engagements with DLS ensued, where it was attempted to highlight the risks associated with the tailored approach. And then you say an extract of the DLS Systems Engineering Master Schedule, the SEMS, which forms part of the contract, highlights how the acquisition process will be tailored during the project execution. And then you refer to annexure, and in particular specific pages. Can you just tell the Chair, please, what the SEMS of DLS involved?
Chair, this SEMS, Systems Engineering Master Schedule, is is a document where the contractor plans at what point they would do engineering activities. And this is where it is evident, and one can see that from the onset at contracting, that amongst others, this tailored baseline was included.
And that was part of the contract.
Correct, that was part of the contract, Chair.
Now, if I can continue in your affidavit, paragraph 15.3, the process is to be juxtaposed to the system acquisition process discussed in paragraph 5 above to highlight the difference in the sequencing of reviews and audits. The intent is to highlight all the deliverables in the yellow block so that one can highlight the outer phase reviews and audits. Just please explain that to us in hopefully non-technical terms as to what the point of difference was that came about by DLS introducing its SEMS as part of the contract. It's a difference from what?
Yeah. In particular, I don't know whether the SEMS is in front of you, Chair. In particular, there are reviews that were happening at a later point and audits that were happening earlier. That is what I attempt to show here, that yes, that is what I'm trying to say, that one has to juxtapose it with what is in the normal standard that is untailored when we compare the tailored version to the untailored version.
Now, is the untailored version the PBL?
Yes, in the untailored version, that RSA Mill Standard 3, one will see that there's a PBL there. And then you will also notice that there are audits, the FCA, Functional Configuration Audit, and the Physical Configuration Audit. It is important for one to note when they happen.
So is it the timing of those specific steps that have to be taken under the PBL?
That's correct, Chair. The sequencing is important.
Yes. And that's the standard PBL, not the one that was later introduced?
Yes.
In Denel?
Correct, Chair.
I think you mentioned earlier that the one that was tailored and produced the Denel specific variation was called PBLA.
The tailored version includes PBLA, but also, Chair, maybe I was not clear, it does include the PBL1, and PBL1 would be the one that is equal to what Armscor would desire.
Right. So there are differences between the PBL1 and PBLA.
Correct, Chair.
Were they significant differences in your opinion?
They are, Chair.
And we'll get in a moment to why you say that and the risks that you expand on in your affidavit. But you've mentioned that both the PBLA and the PBL1 were specified in the contract.
Correct, Chair.
Now, if there are differences between the PBLA and the PBL1, which version did Denel DLS have to comply with, according to your understanding?
Denel is compelled to comply with both of them. It's the PBLA is earlier than the PBL1. PBLA is earlier than PBL1. The reason for it is that they said they were reducing risk.
So did you say earlier than?
Yeah, it would happen earlier than PBL1.
One. So are you saying that there had to be compliance with PBLA? Once that was achieved, only then could they then be complying with PBL1. They had to go through both steps.
Correct, Chair. They are both part of the contract. Of course, at achieving PBLA, then they would do work to also achieve PBL1.
Yes,
And PBL1 is the one that Armscor is interested in.
yes. So the fact that there was a PBLA that initially had to be complied with before PBLA1 is of less significance to you at Armscor. You're concerned really with the PBL1 as it was called.
For me, from the technical perspective, PBL1 is important because that signifies, as we read the definition earlier, that signifies the achievement of requirements and the end of development.
Okay. Now, I'd like to take you, please, because we need you to explain this. Page 20,
And
paragraph 15.4.
Okay, Chair.
This was my opinion at the time. I think it means it was my opinion at the time that the risk had significantly increased for Armscor as payments were linked on the yellow block deliverables, whereas the hardware progress was lagging behind. It is, however, no longer an opinion, as the risk has indeed materialized in the sense that development was scheduled for 5 years ending in 2012, but it is currently 2020 and development is still not yet completed. Can you just please explain that to us in practical, simple terms, if you would? You were indicating that, if I understand it, you were saying that by tailoring the PBL to PBLA introduced something which brought about risk. Risk for whom? For Armscor or for DLS or for whom?
In my opinion, it increased the risk for Armscor.
Did it introduce risk for the achievement of the Hoefyster project itself?
It is my opinion, correct, yes, sir.
Yes.
But are you saying it introduced, or are you saying the risk was always there, but it increased the risk?
Correct, Chair. I think you sum
increased
it
the
well.
risk.
The risk was there. The attempt was to reduce the risk.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it
It was
increased the risk
increased.
for us because, as it is said, as I stated, that activities were linked to payments. Lines were linked to payment activities. So at execution of any line, that released cash, whereas the solution seemed to lag behind, or the achievement of the requirement seemed to lag behind. And now, as we find the situation today,
Okay.
And in what sense did it change the timing for the payment of particular items? Was that brought about by the introduction of the PBLA?
Chair, I have to be clear, the contracting was set out from the start, and at executing any activity or a contracted line, the project had to be followed. So that at executing any activity, it meant that, and if it was correct, it meant that payment had to be made. So that was established as part of the contract. It is in the contract.
If there had been, if it had simply been left at PBL1 rather than tailoring it to PBLA, would that have improved the situation?
Well, my understanding is that, if I can answer that in a way that I understand it to be technically correct, is that what we are interested in is achieving the requirements. Unfortunately, I do not deal with the project management side of works. I'm interested in achieving the requirements. So for me, I am really interested that there should be a point where requirements are met, and that would be at PBL1. I hope that clarification.
And in this case, should they have been met by 2012?
It is correct, Chair. That was the development term was set until that time.
Yes. It must mean that there's something that went terribly wrong, that by 2020 they have not been met.
There were indeed challenges, Chair.
Yes.
There were
Serious challenges.
yeah, technical challenges indeed, yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
And do you believe that the issues that you have raised and will still raise in relation to the PBL tailoring has contributed to that? Has that been one of the challenges or the reasons for the delay in completion of the project time usually?
Chair, it's my opinion, Chair, that, yeah, although I'm not responsible for planning and phasing the project, I think it contributed in the sense that financial planning or financial activities are coupled to those activities. And yes, as part of also the contract, I read that PBLA was one of the major decision points.
Now, as we speak in 2020, bearing in mind that the requirements should have been met in 2012, what is the projection of when the requirements will be met, if you are able to say? Or is there no light at the end of the tunnel?
Chair, I think August this year, I think end of August this year, we sat with the contractor and went through the compliance against requirements, and the teams, or Armscor and DLS, have merged towards a position where we agree what is achieved and what is not achieved, because we had a serious dispute relating to what was complied with and what is not complied with. So I think, yeah, in August we got to that point, and the activities now are really trying to sum up the PBL1 that Armscor is interested in.
So if you look at Armscor's view of what requirements have been complied with and what requirements still have to be complied with, what's the projection of when all the requirements that Armscor regards as important to be complied with are likely to be complied with?
Chair, there are serious requirements that are not complied with, as we heard, that have been put on the table to be discussed with higher authorities, but at my level, on technical level, these are critical requirements that are not met, and we have at least now with the contractor agreed that these are not met, whereas in the past we were not agreeing. Yes.
That gives me the impression that it's not known when all the requirements that Armscor regards as important will be met, at least from your point of view.
Chair, I'm careful maybe to speak on...
I can see you're very careful. But I just want to have an idea. This is something that should have happened by 2012.
Yes.
I mean, in a different work stream of the commission, I was dealing with certain government issues relating to communications, and certain set boxes were supposed to be, installed in houses, or something supposed to have been done already in 2008 or thereabout. And by last year, that program was nowhere near. So now I'm coming across another one where something is, all the requirements should have been met in 2012, and we're in 2020.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering whether it's just one of those where there is just no light at the end of the tunnel as to where it will end.
Chair, the reason why I'm careful is because I don't want to.
You don't want your superiors to.
And also the contractor has
Yeah.
maybe
they-
made mention that they've exhausted their effort, so they are coming to
Yes.
declare what they have
Okay.
achieved. And so
Okay.
that is why I'm saying,
Yeah,
as early as August, we have reached now
Yeah.
an agreement of what we know.
yeah. Okay, no, that's all right. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. Now, Mr. Nkosi, you mentioned earlier that there was a risk for Armscor in relation to making payments at specific stages. Am I right in understanding that what you were saying was that there were changes brought about by PBLA which would have the potential that Armscor would have to pay for something before enough progress had been made or enough deliverables had been delivered? Is that, and I may be oversimplifying it, and I apologize if I am, is my understanding correct?
That's correct, unless you want me to elaborate.
We'll deal with an elaboration in a moment. Has Armscor in fact, has the risk materialized? In other words, has Armscor in fact been paying what might be regarded as prematurely, in that it is paying too much upfront for something that still has to be delivered?
That is correct. That is my standpoint.
Yes. And, but Denel has benefited from that.
In the sense that they were saying they do the work and they have to be paid, yes, that's correct, Chair.
Yes. Now, I'd like you, please, in paragraph 15.5, you say on page 21, I will now identify specific instances where the tailoring with the system acquisition management process by DLS has resulted in the risk of delivering the Hoefyster project, that's the project itself, increasing, and you'll support each item identified with evidence that includes internal memorandums, payments, emails, etc. And you then proceed to give your various examples of why you reach that conclusion, correct?
Correct, Chair.
Now, just before, I'm not going to take you through all of the individual examples or instances that you give, but just explain to us, why would this increase the risk of delivering the Hoefyster project itself? Is it not just a question of Armscor is having to pay a bit early, but if they get the items, does it really matter? The Hoefyster project will still be delivered, or is it actually a more serious problem?
Chair, it becomes a serious problem if I can make an example of one. If, for example, we do an audit prematurely, an audit of an item that we say is now ready to proceed into the next phase of the life of the acquisition process. Let me make example of a physical configuration audit. If we audit the physical item and say this is now the one, before it has finished its development life, we run a risk of repeatedly checking or auditing an item that is still evolving in its development life. That is one of the issues, for an example.
Now, may I take you through some of the instances that you have identified in your affidavit? On page 21, you set out reviews and audits, paragraph 16, and you give us one of the instances, 16.1.1, system requirements review. Now, just explain to us, please, what the purpose is of the system requirements review.
Chair, the system requirements review is the review that, if I can sum it up, is the review that says one has the contractor or the developing agent understands the requirements that have been contracted to them, and they will endeavor to achieve them. So this review really goes into detail of saying you have captured all the requirements, there are no requirements that are missed. That is the essence of this system requirements review.
And you then refer in 16112 to your having realized something as recently as 2018. DLS was developing the product to meet its Badger development specification, not the Armscor specification.
Chair, this is true. I prefer to speak in pictures because it's much easier. At a higher level, there is a requirement specification. And a developing agency, the contractor, has to meet these requirements. And now, in meeting these requirements, a developer will maybe say, okay, they will compile their own specification, which they will name a development specification that says each requirement is going to be met in this manner. This is what they will do. Now, with regards to what I'm stating here is that when that was done, as recently as 2018, in one of the reviews, I learned that Denel informed us that they are not DLS, they are not developing to meet the Armscor spec. Bless you, Chair. They are not developing to meet the Armscor spec, but the development specification. This to me was an issue in the sense that obviously there would be a delta between the two, and we must now make sure that this delta is covered in the sense that if the contractor is saying, I'm only meeting my specification, yours, you must now check whether, having met the development specification, you are satisfied as Armscor. That was for me the issue.
Right, thank you. Then if we may turn by way of another example to paragraph 16.2, page 25 to 26.
Yes.
Physical configuration audit, PCA. Chair, I'm afraid there's more and more acronyms that keep coming up, but I suppose that's the modern way.
Yes, no, I've seen there quite a lot.
Just explain to us again in layman's terms, if you would, lay people's terms, PCA.
I shall attempt. The PCA, Physical Configuration Audit, is an audit that says this bottle of water, if I can, is made to contain so much water, and it does meet the requirements that were set out. So the PCA, in essence, is an audit that is done after having achieved the functionality that is required. It is an audit that leads one into saying, now you may build more or make more of these items. So actually, it is an outcome of an industrialization process, not a development process. An audit that is applicable to the development process is the functional configuration audit. For reasons I have explained earlier, say that if one would be concerned of doing a physical configuration audit on an item that is still evolving in its development life, one is not achieving much because the contractor would be allowed to change the design if the requirement is not met.
Now, if I can take you, please, Mr. Mlipa, to paragraph 16.2.2. Just read out that paragraph, please.
I have reviewed the PCAs which were conducted by DLS, and it was noted that all PCAs are planned and conducted sequentially incorrect. This defeats the purpose of a valuable PCA where there is no value in the configuration as the design is still evolving.
Now, so DLS's PCAs have been done in an incorrect way. Incorrect, if we can go back to the idea of the PBL1 and the PBLA.
Yes, sir.
What has been adopted by the parties themselves, not just Denel, but Armscor as well, by adopting the PBLA, is Denel complying with PBLA in relation to the sequencing and planning and conducting of these PCAs?
Chair, there wouldn't be, in the sense that the PCA that would be done for PBLA, PBLA is a point or a baseline where functionality has not been achieved or requirements have not been achieved. So for one to be interested in those PCAs, in my opinion, not everyone will differ with me, in my opinion, defeats the purpose.
What I'm really asking for is the problem that you identify in 16.2.2, the incorrect planning and sequencing of the PCAs by Denel, is that attributable to the fact that the PBL was tailored to become PBLA, or is this a separate problem?
It is both, Chair. It is not. It is also attributable to that, but also it is a problem in the understanding of the engineering sequencing and the essence of auditing something that is not yet fully developed.
Now you say in 16.2.3 the following: the number of PCAs contracted and planned is 54, which are expected to cost a total value of 110.5 million rand, and the number of conducted and paid out PCAs is 36, and they have cost 100,771,000, etc. What is the point that you're trying to make there? Why is that? What is the significance and effect of this?
The significance of what I'm trying to highlight here is that firstly, it was before the PBL 1 as per contractor language, or PBL as per Armscor language. It may have happened also before or after PBLA, but what I also highlight is that so much money has now been exhausted in auditing something that does not have a product baseline in Armscor's understanding.
And who bears the cost of that? Is it a necessary cost to Armscor or Denel, or who?
Chair, I'm careful with this because it's contracted, but technically, if you ask me, it didn't help me.
And you refer in 16.2.4 to a memo internally at Armscor where you have raised the issue of the value lacking PCAs which have been conducted on the Hoofeister project. Is it correct that you in fact have raised this particular concern and many others that you refer to by way of example in your affidavit?
That's correct, Chair.
And your annexures also bear out that you have sent various memoranda and emails and so forth.
Correct, Chair.
Yes. Have you reached a resolution within within Armscor?
Yes, Chair. I received support from my immediate superior, with particular to this one, where he also agreed to say this is not in line.
Who is that?
Mr. Dave Erasmus.
Erasmus.
Yes.
Right. But is it correct that you haven't reached unanimity within Armscor? There are different views.
Yes, correct, Chair.
Right.
Yeah.
I've skipped through a number of the other examples that you have given. Is there anything specific that you feel is of major importance that you would like to highlight to the Chair before we move off these examples?
Would it be pertinent to mention the critical design review?
The critical?
Design reviews, the CDR, the review.
Yes, where do you deal with that here?
I see it.
Is that 1614 at the foot of page 22 going on to the next page? Is that what you're referring to? Page 22 to 3?
Yes.
Right, just explain to us what these critical design reviews involve.
Chair, this is also one of the points that are of contention in the sense that when one reads the standards or when one looks at RSA Mill Standard 3, I hope Chair has a picture of the process, one will see that the CDR is pictorially painted close to PBL. One who maybe doesn't read the wording may understand that this review is conducted to close out the development phase, meaning that it is the last review before achieving PBL, which is not correct. The CDR, as the word says, it is the critical design review, but when one reads the definition of it, it is very easily for one to understand that to misunderstand that they are talking of production. Whereas the critical design review is referring to the permission to build now the test item that will undergo testing. Now the words that are used at times there is fabricate, permission to fabricate. Now one may misunderstand it and think it is now permission to go into production, whereas no, it's not that. It's just permission to build the test item. Later we show that is what we would call an engineering development model. That is the one that will face now qualification.
All right. Then in paragraph 17 on page 27 to 28, you deal again with the PBLA not existing in the RSA Mill Standard 3. You appear to here be referring to the point we've already dealt with, that PBLA doesn't appear in the RSA Mill Standard 3 document, but tailoring is permissible. It was agreed to with Armscor. Your problem, though, with the PBLA is that it has increased the technical, financial, and other risks in relation to this project. Is that right?
Correct, Chair.
Right, thank you. I'm going to just touch very briefly on paragraph 18, the training system. What does this relate to? You refer in the text here to a training simulator. Just explain to the Chair why you have dealt with this in your affidavit. What is the concern that you have raised here in relation to training simulators?
Chair, as part of the complete project with all elements that have to be delivered, it was stipulated in the contract that there should be a training segment. Now, the training segment includes, in fact, the contract also stipulated that there should be a training simulator. A training simulator, Chair, is a training tool. It's a tool that enables one to train on a replacement product instead of the actual product. In this case, they computerize it, they make it out of computers, and it is listed in the contract what they're supposed to deliver. The issue that I try to raise here is that though one is supposed to deliver these training tools, the training requirement as a whole, the training system, is not limited only to a training tool, but one should address the whole requirement regarding training. And at the time, when very early on, when I was also asked to be a project manager for one of the variants, I had an issue that the contractor was going straight into simulator building without really compiling. As I said earlier, there's a requirement and there's a development specification that says how one will meet these requirements. This training development spec was not there. In fact, it was compiled much later. That was my one issue. And then the second issue is that these training tools, the simulators, were now running far ahead of the actual product. Now one will have a problem that now you have to correct the training tool if the product is still to the point that the tools, the simulators are delivered.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 19 is headed PBL has not been achieved. Again, I'm not going to go into the detail of this. Here, are you referring to PBL 1 or PBLA has not been achieved?
Sorry, Mr. Kennedy, we are now?
Paragraph 19, page 30.
Yes, correct, yes.
And you've set out your reasons for saying that, and then you say there are differences of view on the part of DLS. They believe PBL was established in 2016.
Correct, Chair.
Okay. Now, again, just briefly, could you sum up your evidence relating to paragraph 20 from the foot of page 32, concessions and deviations used as a means of justifying non-compliance? Who is non-compliant?
Chair, requirements, if they are not met, we classify them as non-compliant. Now, what transpired until recently, when it was addressed with the help of our management in support, was that it is my understanding that whenever Denel was facing challenges of meeting the requirement, they would put in a deviation. People will differ with me, it is my opinion. Now, deviations were used in a way of reaching an end to say now they meet the requirement. Now, in normal language, deviation means you are not, it's otherwise of what you are supposed to get. However, in engineering, it is that, but it also means that one must, whenever one requests a deviation, firstly, one should request a deviation before testing. If you do it after testing, it's now after the fact. And if you request a deviation, it is also understood that it is temporary. It's not a permanent state to say now I'm not required to meet this requirement, or because I got a deviation, I now meet the requirement. That was the strange understanding. And that is what, in essence, I'm trying to explain, that deviations were used in a way of saying they meet the requirement.
Does that mean they were deviations which are supposed to be exceptions were ended up being regarded as the norms?
You can put it that way,
Yes,
Chair.
yes.
Yes, you can
Because
put
they
it
are
that
supposed to be exceptions.
Not
Should
only,
not happen all the time.
not only, if I may check, Chair, exceptions, as you put it, that it's just for this instance. You are
Yes.
expected to correct this issue and come back and meet the requirement.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yes.
Now, Mr. Mlipa, may we then turn to paragraph 21, that refers to industrialization. And industrialization is a particular stage, is that correct? Once development, test and evaluation have been successfully completed.
You may call it that, Chair.
Yes.
Phase is the correct term.
A phase,
Yes.
thank you for the correction. Now, is there a problem in relation to this aspect of the Hoefyster project and the relationship between Armscor and Denel?
Yes, Chair, there is a problem in this issue, because for one to industrialize, you would want to industrialize a product that has met the requirements. Now, if one would industrialize a product that hasn't met the requirements, you run the risk of repeating the industrialization.
You must help me now, in case I've missed this somewhere. Industrialization would mean what in a layperson's language in this context?
Apologies, Chair. Industrialization means, for example, in this type of project, you have to now set up a factory, you have to set up production lines,
Okay.
you have to train, or you have to get process engineers that will build the
So if
conveyors.
we go back to the example you gave earlier on of the bottle, this water bottle,
Yes, Chair.
that is something you do after you have go ahead that the bottle meets all the requirements for the purpose for which it is made.
Chair, you are
And now you
spot on.
can go and make more bottles because you have to make them in accordance with these requirements or specifications.
Chair, you are absolutely correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, continue. You were dealing with industrialization and I interrupted you because I just wanted to make sure I understood what it means in paragraph 21.1. You might need to remind you of Mr. Kennedy of the question he was dealing with because
Yeah,
I've
apologies.
interrupted him now.
Yes, thank you. So in relation to industrialization, is there an issue currently between Armscor and Denel as to industrialization?
Chair, there is an issue. In fact, Denel approached Armscor and they said they would like to declare both the product baseline and at the same time confirm industrialization and enter production. Now, at one particular meeting, I asked a question to say, cannot be. And in particular, with regards to the vehicle hull, that if they are now industrializing and preparing to build many, what floor are they building or what product? Because we haven't verified everything. Yeah. Yes. So there is that dispute, yes.
May I ask you now, please, Mr. Mlipa, to look at paragraph 22, which refers to the manufacturing baseline. Is manufacturing baseline different from the concept of the industrialization phase, or are they the same?
The baseline is a culmination of the industrialization phase.
And you refer in paragraph 22.2 to a criticism that you make of DLS. It is establishing two baselines at the same time, termed hitting two birds with one stone. Which are the two baselines? The manufacturing baseline and what else?
They were referring to the product baseline, PBL, and the MBL.
And were they suggesting that the two should happen at the same time?
Yes, they said the two have been achieved.
Have already been achieved.
Yeah.
And you then, your paragraph 22.4 says to this date, the project has not reached the PBL, let alone the MBL.
That is correct, Chair.
And you say that the MBL must come after PBL.
Correct, Chair.
Okay. Now, I'd like, if I may, to just touch on the next paragraph, the Patria vehicle selection. You've referred in some of your paragraphs here to the testing and deficiencies and shortcomings in relation to the Patria vehicle not passing the landmine protection hull tests in the year 2005. You were not involved in that, though, were you?
I was not involved, Chair.
Yes. And the Chair has already heard evidence earlier today from Mr. Nkosi in relation to that. Is there anything specific you want to raise that you believe is particularly significant for the Chair to know, bearing in mind that he will have the opportunity to read all the detail of your affidavit in this regard?
Chair, the essence goes with the requirements that were set out from the onset, and the fact that this requirement, in fact, it is split into two. It is at a lower level. It refers to a hull and wheel detonation, as we have heard previously. That the hull or the shell of the vehicle should not rupture, and a landmine hit under a wheel should also not result in a rupture. Then the second level of requirement refers to the crew survivability when the vehicle is exposed to such a threat. It is a requirement that the crew should survive. It is a requirement. So that, for me, is the essence of it. And then when one now goes into the criteria, or the criteria that were set as part of the contract, to say which is a critical criteria, a critical criteria is to be understood as that criteria that one has to meet. At not meeting that requirement, the person should be disqualified. And from reading evidence that is presented, or that we had to do as also part of my work of doing requirements verification and thorough work and seeing that authenticity is achieved here, one observed that the first test for this landmine was failed, as you heard earlier, Chair. Now, at that instance, it is my understanding that because it's a critical criteria, that there shouldn't have been any progress.
Thank you, Mr. Mlipa. May I just touch on one final aspect before we end our questions of you? Can you turn, please, to page 408?
408. 408.
You have that?
I have it, sir.
This is headed with the Armscor logo, and the heading is Functional Configuration Audit Report Project Hoefeyster. And under summary, the heading summary, it says this document contains the functional configuration audit results of the requirements baseline for Project Hoefeyster conducted in June 2020. It's dated, the date of issue is August 2020, and your name appears on the following page 409 at the top. Is that correct? As having been prepared by you.
Correct, Chair. This is a document I compiled recently.
And if I might just draw your attention to a couple of passages. At page 416.
416.
Yes.
Yes, I'm there, Chair.
Just before we look at the text that appears there, what is the purpose of the document, and basically what were you trying to achieve in undertaking this audit and setting out the report?
Yes, Chair, as I assume that you have the acquisition process in front of you. Firstly, the functional configuration audit is a document that is an input to the audit that is conducted by Armscor Quality Division. It is an input to that audit, QES, they refer to as Quality Engineering Services, because that division will say that the baseline is indeed correct and has been established. The issue ensued when the contractor was stating that they have audited themselves and they say they are good. Now, I think it is understandable that one cannot audit oneself because you will be biased in auditing yourself. So, then, as part of the reviews, we said, as a minimum, because preferably there should be an independent body that audits, as a minimum, we will compile an audit that we will share with the contractor and inform them that this is our official position. This is the reason why I compiled the document. It is now not the norm. Apologies. Sorry, Chair. It is not the norm for Armscor to write audits and share with the contractor. The QES division gets involved and does that. But because of the technical disagreements that were happening between us, Armscor, and Denel, I felt it important, together with the Armscor team, that let's compile a report, an audit report, and share with them that this is our position, official position, so that we could inform our leadership to say, this is where we stand. This document I compiled with the permission. I informed my immediate manager and I informed also the leaders to say, we as the project will write this report, and we shared it with the contractor, and the contractor didn't object heavily to it, yes. That's the history of this document.
Thank you for that. I just want to take you to two brief references in the body of your report, page 416.
416, yes, Chair.
Half or two-thirds the way down the page, your report says Appendix A contains detailed breakdown of the score covered by tables 1, 2, and 3. 4111 observation development was conducted against an updated Badger development specification, which was no longer in line with the contractor development specification, issue 3. Corrective action DLS was advised to reflect their development against the contracted Badger development specification. 3. Observation, most deviations were requested after DLS had failed to meet requirements, implying that these deviations were applied for after the fact. Is this a reference to your earlier evidence in this regard?
It is correct, Chair. This is now, as I say, a summary of now what had been happening over the years, and to say now we're putting it in this audit report and just showing to them that this is what we compile in our report, yes.
And then the other example that I'd like to take you to, page 417, the next page, non-compliance.
Yes, Chair.
You refer there to catastrophic. And did you make any findings in your audit report as to whether there were any catastrophic non-compliances on the part of Denel and DLS in particular?
The outstanding requirement with regards to crew protection, survivability, and others, I don't know if I'm at liberty of going into the detail of the requirement.
Mr. Kennedy will ask you if he thinks the details are important. Yeah, you continue.
Okay. Yes, there are requirements that are critical and may result in catastrophic outcomes. So yes, those definitions are included there as a means of guiding everyone, because we had to now guide everyone to say what is meant by a catastrophic event, what is meant by a critical event, that, etc. If the product is not meeting such a requirement, if the requirement is of a critical or catastrophic consequence, what does that mean? For an example, the crew survivability in the event of a landmine threat. Now, the details surrounding that issue is that the contractor does say that they were not contracted for TP3, as you heard earlier, Chair. Now, it becomes a bit problematic for my side, technical compliance, in the sense that now, how will we address this crew survivability requirement? Because
these vehicles can't be used if there is that risk.
How, yeah, Chair,
Yes.
you know, what do we say?
What do you do with them? What's the purpose of having them?
Yes, Chair, what do we say? Sorry, Chair. Yes, well, then the contractor said since that requirement is not yet contracted, they are willing to do the test, but they want that requirement to be contracted now, to say.
But what would have been would there have been a useful purpose for these vehicles to be manufactured if they would not meet that requirement? I mean, how do you get into a contract for the manufacture of those vehicles without including that requirement? Or is the position that it's so obvious that even if you don't include it, a manufacturer should never think that they should manufacture vehicles like this without that requirement, because it's such a fundamental requirement? Or what do you think is the position?
Chair, the position from the contractor is that they have met the first lower level requirement, as you heard earlier, of protection against hull breach anywhere under the vehicle or wheel shot. They've met that one. The TP3 is that requirement that is now equivalent or will verify the crew survivability. Now, if it's not done, how would one then now say the crew inside the vehicle is okay? Because we haven't done this test to really see if, for example, items that are mounted inside the vehicle are dislodged and they become projectiles towards passengers, that they hit them, or as earlier you heard that they may even be stabbed by certain, because one must appreciate the environment that one is in. It's a very confined environment inside the vehicle. So yeah, Chair, when you ask me that, I also do not know what to say, because it is such a critical requirement, though I must highlight, Chair, that as part of negotiations, contract negotiations, way before I was involved, it was stated that a TP2 test would be used to validate the vehicle. Now, as you heard earlier, Chair, the TP2 test is of a lower level and may not be used to really confirm that the crew is safe inside.
Could it be said that a vehicle that has been manufactured and without meeting that requirement is fit for purpose? For the purpose for which these vehicles are made?
Sir, Chair, I would be careful to say that without objective evidence supporting that.
Yes.
So I would be
You are not
inclining to saying one must be careful then.
Yes.
Yes.
But it's possible that some people might think it wouldn't be properly fit for purpose, but maybe others would say it is fit for purpose. There might be room for different views.
You are correct, Chair. There are divided camps here.
Yes.
And the fact of the matter is that when we look at requirements clinically, against that requirement, we would say this requirement hasn't been verified for crew safety.
But even those who might say it is fit for purpose, in saying so, they would not be, they would have to accept that there is a serious risk to the passengers.
Yes, Chair, you are absolutely correct. There
Yes.
is a serious amount of uncertainty here.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. A final question, if I may, Mr. Mlipa. What has happened to this audit report that you prepared?
Chair, as I mentioned that DLS responded obviously with objections, and I did inform them that I accept their objections, in particular the reference to the landmine, that they are not contracted to it. But as the report says, then that we are sitting with a dilemma of not being in a position to classify the vehicle in terms of safety or not. We are leaning more towards saying one has to be careful, as you heard from Mr. Nkosi. And that is where the report is, and the intent of the report, as it is stated earlier, is that it will be submitted to it is an input to the QES audit. And once it is received by that division, they will then consider everything that is on the table and they will make a decision.
The purpose of the report is to state your position, and other people may have their own views about the issues that you cover in the report, but it reflects your position.
Correct, Chair. Amongst others, for example, compliance, the contractor was saying they achieved 99% compliance against our requirements. As you see in the report, we disagree with that, and we went into numerous work sessions where we have now, for example, we removed all those the compliances which the contractor said they comply because they have a deviation.
Okay, okay. All right.
Thank you, Chair. We've completed the questions we wish to put to this witness.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Thank you very much, Mr. Mlipa, for coming to assist the Commission. We appreciate it very much. If we need you to come back, we will ask you again. But thank you very much. You are now excused.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy?
Chair, we are at a stage now, it's 4:45. We don't have another witness immediately available. We'd initially planned in the regional schedule to have somebody to follow today.
Yes.
But there's been an issue which I'd like to raise with you in chambers
Yes.
in relation to some logistical problems.
Okay.
May we approach you on that score? And then
Yes.
just ask in the meantime that you adjourn for the hearing to resume tomorrow.
Yes.
We have scheduled 3 witnesses tomorrow. Would it be perhaps, I can't remember, Chair, if you indicated the starting at 10 o'clock would be a problem for you tomorrow because of other
starting
commitments?
at 10 o'clock will be a problem, but I'd indicated that tomorrow sitting until beyond 5 might be a problem, but
Yes.
I think as I see the situation now, we could sit up to 6 tomorrow, so there is room for that, unless something changes.
Thank you, Chair.
So in terms of starting, let's start at 10,
At 10.
but there is a possibility of being able to go up to 6 if necessary.
Thank you, Chair.
If we can't go beyond 5, we'll adjourn at 5. But in that event, I would be willing to explore the possibility of starting quite early on Friday.
Yes.
And when I say quite early, depending on everyone's situation, maybe starting at even 8:30
On Friday.
On Friday,
Yeah.
8:30 or 9, depending on where we will be, because on Friday also we won't be able to use the whole day because of my commitments.
Yeah.
So we could explore how early we could start.
Certainly, Chair.
Yeah.
On tomorrow's situation, I know you have other commitments and challenges late in the afternoon.
Yes.
And there are other council involved as well, I know.
Yeah.
We're amenable, if it suits you, Chair, to start early tomorrow, if that, perhaps at 9 o'clock, if that suits you, and that may give a bit more flexibility for your other commitments.
Yes.
But we're in your hands.
Yes. Yeah, no, tomorrow morning we can't start before 10.
Okay.
But on Friday we could start earlier than 10. If there are problems, obviously in the afternoon for council to be here beyond 5 or thereabout. So even if I'm available, we'll accommodate council.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, okay. So the witnesses for tomorrow, who have we got?
It's Mr. Dreven. He's the program manager of DLS. Mr. van den Heefer, also from DLS, production planner, and Ms. Karine Geldenhuis, who was at the time She was still employed there. She's left. She was then the DVS legal and commercial executive. So they will deal with specific aspects of the DLS or the DVS procurement process.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we'll adjourn for the day. We adjourn.
Sure. Let me just try and see it now.
Thank you, Mr. I hope it was okay for you. I know we didn't get to the details. We didn't go into it. It's all in the but you are right. Oh, so